I never thought I'd hear those words from my own parents. Don't come home. The words hit me like a ton of bricks, but there was no time to react. My name is Megan Turner. I'm 32 years old, and I never thought this would happen to me. I had always been the one who kept the peace in the family. The one who showed up for everyone, no matter what. I thought my parents would always be there for me, just as I had been for them. But that day, it all changed. It was a quiet afternoon when they told me I wasn't welcome anymore. I stood in their living room, holding back tears, trying to understand what was happening. They were angry, but I didn't know why. I thought I'd done everything right. I had always tried to make them proud, but it wasn't enough. You're a burden to us, Megan. You need to figure things out on your own, my father said, his voice cold, devoid of the warmth I had once felt from him. My mother didn't say a word. She just stared at me, her face unreadable. The pain of those words still echoes in my mind to this day. You need to leave. Don't come back. I stood frozen for a moment, not knowing what to do. My entire world, my sense of safety, shattered in an instant. How could they say that? How could they just throw me away like I was nothing? My heart felt like it was sinking, but I didn't let them see me break. I nodded, gathered my things, and walked out the door. There was no confrontation, no screaming match. I just left. That was the last time I saw them, and for a long time, I didn't hear from them either. It's been years now, and they haven't reached out. The silence between us grew louder every day. I built my own life away from them, tried to make sense of what had happened. But now, after all this time, they've come back. They've knocked on my door, begging for my forgiveness. After everything they did to me, they want me back. I don't know what to feel. I've spent years learning to live without them. But can I really turn my back on them now? Or is this the moment to stand strong and show them I'm not the same person they threw away? The first few months after I left felt like I was living in a fog. The world kept moving around me, but I was stuck, unable to make sense of what had happened. I found a small apartment on the edge of the city, a place that felt like a fresh start, even though I didn't feel like starting anything. I spent my days working at a local bookstore, surrounded by the comforting smell of paper and ink, but it was hard to focus on anything. Every time I picked up a book, my mind wandered back to that moment, my parents' cold words, their unforgiving eyes. At night, I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever see them again, if they would ever reach out. But they never did. I had no one to call, no one to ask how I was doing. My friends had their own lives, their own families, and I was too embarrassed to ask for help. Slowly, I became used to the silence. I started to fill the void with routines, work, cleaning, grocery shopping. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me going. I became independent, stronger than I ever thought I could be. But the loneliness never really went away. I would walk past families at the park, parents laughing with their kids, and it would hit me like a wave. The pain of being excluded, of being the one left behind, still stung. Some days, I would cry silently in my apartment, wondering what went wrong. But I never told anyone. I couldn't. My pride wouldn't let me. Then, after 2 years of silence, the knock came. It was late, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find my parents standing there, their faces strained, but there was no mistaking the desperation in their eyes. My mother looked at me, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Megan, we're so sorry. We were wrong. Please forgive us." I froze. I hadn't seen them in so long. Part of me wanted to slam the door in their faces, to make them feel the pain I had endured, but another part of me, a part one didn't want to acknowledge, wanted to let them in, wanted to believe that they truly regretted what they had done. They stood there, waiting for me to say something, anything. But I couldn't. All I could do was stare at them, trying to decide if this was real or just another game they were playing. I stood there, staring at my parents, trying to process what was happening. The silence between us felt suffocating. My mother's voice trembled as she repeated, "Megan, we're sorry. Please forgive us." Her eyes, filled with regret, met mine, and for a moment, I saw the woman who had once held me as a child, who had kissed my scraped knees and promised me that nothing could ever tear our family apart. But that was before. Now I was an adult, a woman who had been forced to learn how to live without the people who were supposed to protect her. My father stood beside her, his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. He hadn't spoken yet, but I could tell he was waiting for me to say something. What happened? I finally managed to ask, my voice low, trembling with a mix of confusion and anger. My mother looked away for a moment, as if struggling to find the right words. We made a mistake, Megan. We didn't understand what we were doing. We pushed you away when we should have been there for you. I felt a lump form in my throat. I had heard these words before, but they had never meant anything. I had heard apologies from people who only apologized when it suited them, when they needed something from me. This felt the same, but different. The years of silence, the hurt, the abandonment, it wasn't something that could be erased with a few words. You can't just come back and expect everything to be okay, I said, my voice stronger now. My own anger surprised me. I had thought I was over this, that I had moved on. But hearing them say they were sorry, knowing they had abandoned me for so long, made everything rush back. I had spent so much time trying to heal, trying to create a life for myself without them. And now they were standing here, expecting forgiveness. I've changed, my father finally spoke. His voice was quieter now, almost pleading. I know I hurt you, but I want to make things right. We both do. I felt a wave of frustration rise in me. Make things right? How could they possibly make things right? The years of pain, the loneliness, the nights I spent wondering why they didn't love me enough to keep me close, it was too much. Too many years of emptiness. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I wasn't sure what I wanted. Part of me wanted to slam the door in their faces, to tell them I never wanted to see them again. But another part of me, the part that still missed the family I once knew, wanted to believe them. Wanted to believe that they had truly changed. I stood there, caught between two worlds, one where I would never forgive them and another where, maybe, just maybe, there was room for healing. I stood in the doorway, watching my parents as they waited for me to respond. The years of silence between us weighed heavy in the air. It was so much to process, too much for me to handle in a single moment. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of everything they had said, trying to understand if they truly meant it. My heart ached, not just because of the hurt they had caused me, but because, deep down, I had always longed for this moment when they would finally realize what they had done. But now that it was here, I wasn't sure if I could forgive them. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. If I forgave them, would it mean I was weak? Would it mean that all the pain, the loneliness, the years of living without their support would suddenly vanish? Or would it just be another way for them to control me? I took a step back, closing the door slightly to give myself some space. The tears that had threatened to fall finally came. I wiped my eyes quickly, not wanting them to see my vulnerability. I had spent too long hiding my emotions, pretending that I was okay when I wasn't. But now, facing them again, everything felt raw. My father spoke first, his voice softer this time, almost pleading. Megan, we were wrong. I was wrong. I should have been there for you. I know I can't change the past, but I want to make up for it. I don't expect things to be the same, but I want to be a part of your life again. His words felt hollow, like they were coming from someone who didn't truly understand the depth of the damage he had done. It wasn't just about what had happened in the past. It was about the years I had spent trying to rebuild myself, trying to create a life without them. I had worked so hard to get here, to stand on my own 2 feet, and now they were asking for something I wasn't sure I could give. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You don't get to just walk back into my life after everything. You don't get to erase the pain you caused. The words hung in the air between us, and for a moment, neither of us moved. They stood there, waiting, hoping for some sign that I would let them in, but I couldn't make that decision just yet. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to. My heart was torn between the part of me that wanted to forgive and the part that had learned to live without them. I didn't owe them my forgiveness. I owed myself peace. But that didn't make the decision any easier. I could feel the weight of their presence lingering in the room, heavy and suffocating. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, to gather my thoughts before I made any decisions. My parents were standing in front of me, waiting, desperate, but I was the one who felt like I was drowning. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken words and emotions we weren't sure how to express. For so long, I had imagined what this moment would feel like. I had played it over and over in my head, what I would say, how I would feel, and how I would respond. But none of that mattered now. The reality of their apology, their regret, felt so different from the dream I had created in my mind. I had spent the last few years building a life on my own. A life where I didn't need them. Where I had learned to find my own strength, to depend on myself, to survive without the people I had always thought would be there for me. And now, they were here, asking for forgiveness. But could I really forgive them? Could I erase the pain of all those years? The years of feeling abandoned, of not being enough, of never hearing from them when I needed them the most? My mother's eyes were filled with tears, her voice pleading. Megan, please. I can't undo what's been done, but I want to make things right. We were wrong. I was wrong. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that they were truly sorry, that they understood the hurt they had caused. But I wasn't sure if I could trust them again. I wasn't sure if I could let them back into my life. I've spent years learning to live without you, I said, my voice steady but thick with emotion. I don't know if I can just turn that off. I've worked so hard to get here, to be okay without you. The words came out before I could stop them. And the more I said them, the more I realized how true they were. I had built a life for myself without them, and now they were asking to be a part of it. But was I ready to let them in again? Was I ready to risk everything I had fought for? My father stepped forward, his face softening. Megan, we understand. But please don't shut us out. We're your family. We made a mistake, and we're here to make it right. I could see the pain in his eyes, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. I needed time. I needed to figure out what I wanted. The silence returned, heavy and oppressive, as we all waited for the next move. But I wasn't ready to make one just yet. I woke up the next morning with a sense of heaviness that I couldn't shake off. The events of the previous night replayed in my mind, over and over. My parents' faces, their pleading eyes, their desperate words, they were still fresh in my mind. But as much as I wanted to forgive them, as much as I wanted to believe that they truly regretted what had happened, something inside me held me back. I had spent years of my life learning to be independent, to live without them. And now, they wanted to waltz back in, expecting everything to be the way it was before. I knew deep down that nothing could ever go back to the way it was. They had hurt me. And no matter how sorry they were, that pain couldn't just disappear. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my cup of coffee, the steam swirling in the air. My apartment was quiet, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator. The silence was familiar to me now, comforting even, but the weight of the conversation with my parents lingered in the air. I didn't know what to do next. Part of me wanted to slam the door in their faces, to tell them they had no right to ask for my forgiveness. But another part of me, the part that still longed for the family I once had, wanted to hear them out, wanted to believe that they had truly changed. I couldn't make that decision yet. I needed space. I needed time to figure out what was best for me, what I wanted. I knew that I couldn't let them back into my life just because they asked. But the thought of never seeing them again, of never being part of their lives again, was hard to bear. I spent the rest of the day trying to push the thoughts away. I went to work, buried myself in the routine, and tried to pretend like everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. I was torn. I couldn't deny that part of me still loved them, still wanted to be part of their lives. But I wasn't sure if I could ever trust them again. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I let them back in, I would be letting myself down. And that was a feeling I wasn't ready to face. As the day turned to evening, I found myself back in my apartment, the same silence surrounding me. But this time, it didn't feel as comforting. It felt empty. And as I sat there, I realized that the decision wasn't just about them. It was about me. I had to figure out who I was, what I wanted, and what I needed. Only then could I decide if I could let them back into my life. But for now, I wasn't ready. And maybe, just maybe, I would never be ready. I woke up the next morning with the lingering weight of yesterday's conversation hanging over me. I could still hear my mother's voice, soft but pleading, and my father's, cracked with regret. The silence in my apartment felt different now. It was heavier, like it was reminding me of all the things I had to decide. I spent most of the day in a haze, not really focusing on anything, work, errands, nothing seemed to matter. I couldn't stop thinking about them. It was a strange feeling to want so badly to move on, yet be constantly pulled back to the past. The part of me that still longed for a family, for the love I once had, kept creeping back, but I knew I couldn't ignore the hurt. They had chosen to turn their backs on me when I needed them most. And now they were back, but it was too late. Or was it? I could feel the inner conflict, the push and pull of my emotions. Part of me wanted to believe their apology, wanted to believe that they had truly changed, that they understood the pain they caused. But how could I trust them again? Could I risk opening myself up to that kind of hurt again? I didn't know. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, not sure which way to go. I wanted to let them in, but I also wanted to protect myself from further damage. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about me and what I had become in their absence. I had learned to stand on my own. I had learned to rely on myself, to make my own way in the world. Could I throw that all away for the sake of family? Could I let them back into my life and risk losing the independence I had fought so hard to gain? As I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the coffee in front of me, I realized that this wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about understanding my own worth. I wasn't the same person I had been when I left. I had changed. And no matter what my parents wanted, I needed to decide what was best for me. Slowly, I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. I could see families walking by, laughing, enjoying each other's company. I wondered if I would ever have that again. But I also knew that I didn't need it. I had built my own life, and maybe that was enough. Maybe it was time for me to stop waiting for something from them and start living for myself. I had spent the past few days thinking, overanalyzing every little detail, trying to figure out what I should do. My mind kept circling back to the same question. Should I let them back in? The idea of moving forward with my life, without them, had been a constant companion, a safety net that kept me grounded. But now, that safety net seemed to be crumbling. The past kept knocking on my door, and for the first time in years, I found myself wondering if maybe, just maybe, I should open it. But the fear was still there. Fear of the pain, fear of the disappointment, fear of being hurt all over again. I had to remind myself that I was stronger than that now. I had fought so hard to build a life on my own, a life where I didn't need anyone to take care of me, where I didn't have to rely on family. The strength I had gained from those years of solitude had shaped me into someone different. But was that enough? Was it enough to protect me from the emotions that I was now grappling with? I didn't know. But as the days passed, I began to realize something. I had spent so much of my life trying to earn their love and approval. I had lived for their approval, their acceptance, but that was no longer what I wanted. I wanted peace. I wanted to feel whole again, regardless of whether they were in my life or not. My parents' apology, their regret, wasn't going to fix everything. It wasn't going to erase the past. It wasn't going to erase the years of silence and pain. But it was a start. A start that I wasn't sure I was ready for. The truth was, I didn't need them to validate me anymore. I had already validated myself. I had created a life that I could be proud of. And that was something they could never take away from me. I realized that forgiveness wasn't about them. It wasn't about them begging me to come back or making amends. It was about me choosing to move forward, choosing to let go of the bitterness and the anger that had been holding me back. I didn't have to forget the past, but I could stop letting it control me. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real healing I needed. I didn't expect the phone call to come that afternoon. It was almost as if the universe was testing me, pushing me to face my past once more. The screen lit up with my father's name. I froze, my heart beating faster, and for a brief moment, I wondered if I should just let it go to voicemail. But then, something inside me urged me to answer. I took a deep breath and pressed the green button. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel the anxiety creeping in. "Megan, it's your dad," my father's voice came through, hesitant but soft. We've been thinking a lot, and we wanted to talk to you. To explain. I could hear the tension in his voice, the weight of all the unsaid things hanging in the air between us. I had already made my decision, but hearing his voice, hearing the years of regret in it, made me question whether I was doing the right thing. I wasn't sure if I was ready to open up that door again, but I knew I had to. What is it, Dad? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. We were wrong, Megan, he said, the words coming out slower now, more deliberate. And I know there's nothing we can say to undo the past, but we want you to know that we're sorry. We've missed you. Please, just give us a chance to make it right. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of his words. I had already made peace with the fact that they might never come back into my life. But hearing him say that, hearing him admit he was wrong, it hit me harder than I thought it would. I've spent so long building a life without you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but steady. And I'm not sure if I can just go back. I don't know if I can forgive you just like that. You've hurt me more than I can explain. There was a long pause on the other end. I understand, he said finally. I just want you to know that we're here, whenever you're ready. His words were gentle, but I could hear the desperation behind them. I took another deep breath, trying to steady myself. I wasn't ready to let them back in, not yet. But I wasn't sure if I ever would be. I wasn't sure if I could ever forget what had been done to me, and yet I didn't want to carry this anger with me forever. I'll think about it, I replied, my heart heavy with uncertainty. But I can't promise anything. And with that, I hung up the phone, the weight of the decision still pressing down on me. The silence that followed felt louder than it ever had before. I wasn't sure where to go from here, or if I even wanted to, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a small flicker of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could find peace in this mess. But for now, it was up to me to decide when or if I would let them back in. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to process everything. My father's words kept echoing in my mind, we're here, whenever you're ready. It was as if he was giving me an open invitation, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to accept it. I didn't know if I was ready to let them back into my life, even if they were truly sorry. The hurt was still too fresh, and I wasn't sure if forgiveness was even possible. I had built a life on my own, and it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And part of me was afraid that opening up to them again would mean I was throwing that away. I couldn't let go of the independence I had fought so hard for, the strength I had gained over the years. But as the days passed, I realized that holding onto that anger, that resentment, wasn't making me stronger. It was only weighing me down. It was like carrying a heavy backpack full of rocks. The longer I held onto it, the harder it became to keep going. And maybe, just maybe, forgiving them would be the first step in setting that burden down. I thought about the life I had without them, how I had found comfort in the small things, the quiet moments, the independence I had carved out for myself. But I also thought about the loneliness. The emptiness that crept in when I saw families, couples, friends gathering together, and I was left on the sidelines. I wasn't sure if I was ready to open that door again, but the thought of being alone forever, of never having the chance to heal those old wounds, made me question if I should at least try. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about them, but about me. Maybe it was about letting go of the past so that I could move forward. I didn't need them to validate me anymore. I had done that for myself. But maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to let them in again, not as the parents they once were, but as the people they had become. I wasn't sure what that would look like, or if it was even possible, but I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't keep living in the past. It was time to make a choice. A choice for me. A choice for my future. I wasn't ready to forgive just yet, but I knew I couldn't keep holding on to the hurt either. It was time to move forward, and I had to figure out what that looked like on my terms. I spent the next few days reflecting, turning over the idea of forgiveness in my mind like a puzzle that I couldn't quite solve. There was so much to consider, so much hurt, so much time lost. But one thing kept nagging at me. How long could I carry this weight of resentment? How long could I continue to let the past control my present? It was draining. The tension, the constant fight within myself, the back and forth between wanting to let go and wanting to protect my heart. I knew deep down that forgiving wasn't about letting them off the hook. It was about freeing myself. I wasn't doing this for them. I was doing it for me. But even as I thought about this, there was still hesitation. I had lived so long without them that part of me was afraid to let them back in, afraid to let myself need them again. The life I had built, quiet, independent, secure, was mine. I wasn't sure if I was ready to risk it. But at the same time, I knew I couldn't keep holding on to the past forever. It was like being stuck in a loop, circling the same pain, never moving forward. And maybe, just maybe, I had to take a leap of faith. I didn't need to have all the answers right away. I just needed to take that first step. The decision wasn't about perfection. It was about healing. It was about accepting that I was allowed to feel hurt, but also that I was allowed to move past it. That I could move forward, even if I wasn't sure what the future would hold. The truth was, I had been afraid of letting go of the anger. Afraid that if I did, I'd lose myself. But maybe I had already lost enough years spent in pain, enough time spent looking backward. It was time to look ahead. The past had shaped me, but it didn't have to define me anymore. I didn't know how I would forgive them or if I even could, but I knew I had to try. And trying meant making the choice to step forward, no matter how uncertain it felt. I didn't owe them an explanation. I owed myself the freedom to let go. And that, for the first time in years, felt like a step toward peace. I stood at the door, my hand hovering over the doorknob, not sure if I should open it. It had been days since my conversation with my parents, and still, I wasn't sure what to do. The weight of their apology sat heavy on my chest, yet the space between us felt just as vast as it had been all those years. I could hear their voices in my head again, asking for forgiveness, asking for a chance to make things right. But even now, I wasn't sure if I could give them that. It was strange, feeling like I was standing on the edge of something big, something that could either heal the wounds of the past or reopen them completely. I had spent so many years carrying that pain, feeling alone, abandoned by the very people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. And yet, here they were, asking for another chance. A part of me wanted to say no, to shut the door and walk away. I had been living without them for so long, without the drama, without the constant disappointment. But another part of me, the part that had missed them, that still loved them despite everything, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way back to each other. I knew forgiveness wasn't something that could happen overnight, and I didn't expect it to. It wasn't just about saying the words, it was about truly understanding each other, truly healing the wounds we had caused one another. But that was something we would have to work on together. I took a deep breath, finally turning the knob and opening the door. They were standing there, just like the last time I saw them, but now there was something different, an openness, a vulnerability in their eyes that hadn't been there before. "Megan," my father said, his voice a little softer, a little more uncertain. "We just want you to know that we're here. We know we've hurt you, and we can't undo that. But we want to make things right, if you'll let us." I looked at them, at the two people who had once been my whole world. I wasn't sure if I was ready to let them back in, but maybe that didn't matter anymore. Maybe it wasn't about being ready. Maybe it was just about taking that first step, no matter how hard it felt. I stepped aside, letting them into my home, into my life once again. It wasn't perfect, and I didn't have all the answers. But I was finally ready to try. To try for them, for me, for the possibility of healing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving forward, not because I had to, but because I finally wanted to.